Hello, hello, hello. It is me, your True Hill Phenom SP3. We are live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter for True Heel Heat's Dark Side of the Ring Season 3, Episode 7 review, The Dynamite Kid. We're going to be talking all about the episode featuring the life and career and controversy surrounding one of the most influential professional wrestlers of all time, the Dynamite Kid. I am back once again with the connoisseur of reporting, the Puerto Rican Randy Orton, Romeo Anthony Colon.
Yeah, I've been getting a lot of that in the streets. People confusing me for Randy Orton with my facial hair. What can I say?
Well, you and Randall Keefe are vipers, are legend killers. You killed the legend of Raw reviews not going well with your beautiful song, "The Doll in the Mirror." It was quite riveting. It's getting a great response on social media for everyone who wants to see Rated Raw Superstars. That's going to drop later today on the True Hill Heat YouTube channel. But we are here to talk about Dark Side of the Ring, Season 3, Episode 7, The Dynamite Kid. Please, if you are watching us on YouTube, drop us a like. Share this video with all your wrestling fans, friends, and family. Of course, if you are new to the True Hill Heat YouTube channel, smash that subscribe button. Any bit of help, it definitely helps us out by you pushing the subscribe button, dropping those likes on this video. It helps more people get, this video, be able to see it, engage with the rest of us of the True Hill Heat community. You guys have been great for our Dark Side of the Ring reviews, as well as our A&E biography reviews. You guys have been awesome, so supportive, and we've been definitely appreciating it. This is actually the Season 3 mid-season finale, Romeo, so we are not going to be doing another Dark Side of the Ring review until September. So I want to see that support. You can send in a super chat. $1 or more will enter you into our call-in edition of True Hill Heat 1:30 next Saturday, June 19th. We're going to be giving the link to all of those people who have been supporting True Hill Heat YouTube channel with $1 or more super chat by entering them into our call-in. If you're available, you are able to call in on that edition of True Hill Heat, talk a little bit about professional wrestling with us. And of course, though, if you're watching us on Facebook or Twitter, drop us a like, drop us a heart emoji, a laugh emoji, an angry emoji. However this episode of Dark Side of the Ring made you feel, please let us know with those expressions. Tag a friend in the live chat, and we always want to hear your thoughts. Like I said, we're going to definitely highlight any super chats that we get on this edition of our Dark Side of the Ring Season 3 review. But we always love to, show your comments in the live chat. A lot of support on the A&E biography episode this past week for Bret Hart, the season finale. We had a war going on in the live chat. You were there, Romeo. How was it to feel that heat in the live chat during that review?
As I expected, not enough of the Shawn Michaels clique came out on the. We were out.
Quite a bit outnumbered. The Bret Hart marks came out in full effect, led by Rachel Cornell, one of our favorites of the True Hill Heat community. A lot of folks were very angry at Vince McMahon for still, thinking that he was in the right for screwing Bret. There was even some people, though, who said that Bret screwed Bret. So you weren't alone, Romeo. You weren't completely alone. So at least you had that. But this one is about the Dynamite Kid, someone who's very close to Bret the Hitman Hart. Romeo, you are usually the quarterback on True Rewind, the quarterback on Rated Raw Superstars, the quarterback on NX3. So I will have you take it away for our mid-season finale of Season 3 of Dark Side of the Ring. And I think Romeo is on a little bit of a lag, but we're gonna...
Yeah, you got the Hart family connection right away. Lance...
No, you're good. You're good now.
Lance Storm starts us off crediting the higher risk, faster pace of wrestling today to the Dynamite Kid and Stampede Wrestling. We meet Michelle Billington, former wife of the Dynamite Kid. Her sister, Julie, ends up being Julie marries Bret Hart. So there's a connection right there.
Yes, they were connected from the hip because they married sisters. That was something that I learned prior to this episode of Dark Side of the Ring by someone who was one of the talking heads on this edition, none other than the publisher of Wrestling Observer newsletter, Dave Meltzer. He actually talked about that on the podcast this week, that they married sisters. And I think we lost Romeo. He is a bit lagging right now, so he's trying to get adjusted. So yeah, leave your comments in the live chat. Let us know what you thought about this episode. We're just getting things started right now. We got Fifth Generation Carney saying, hope everyone is doing well. We hope you're doing well, good brother. You've been very supportive of us over on the True Hill Heat YouTube channel. Thank you for joining us live. We also got Jason Michael Campbell, JMC, saying, sup guys, that's awesome. I did not know that Dynamite Kid and Bret Hart married sisters. Yeah, it's a small world. And for if Mark Lloyd is able to join us, he has another sister to draw his attention to. And we got the MW Network, another good brother who's been supporting us a lot over here on the True Hill Heat YouTube channel. He says, wild how the comparisons between Will Ospreay and Dynamite Kid has sparked since the big injury. Truly hope this does not become a reality. Will got a bright future ahead. For sure, I think the best comparison to Dynamite Kid is Chris Benoit. And if you saw this episode of Dark Side of the Ring, you know they are very comparative in multiple different ways, and more than I even thought before. I knew that Chris Benoit was inspired by the work rate of Dynamite Kid from early on in his career, being a fan of Chris Benoit before the tragedy that happened in 2007. I knew that the Dynamite Kid inspired him in a lot of ways, and his ring style. Also, Jushin Thunder Liger as well. But I did not know that Dynamite Kid was a predecessor to Chris Benoit in multiple different ways. We got a bunch of people watching us on Facebook. If you guys can drop us a like, it's free. Drop us a heart emoji, an angry emoji, however this episode of Dark Side of the Ring made you feel. We greatly appreciate it. You can also leave your thoughts in the live chat. We always like to highlight your comments, so let us know. We got JMC also saying, I have to give to both sisters. They're pretty cute. JMC going for the Mark Lloyd of this edition of our Dark Side of the Ring review. But yeah, like Romeo said, we had Lance Storm featured as one of the talking heads here. We then hear from the former wife, the widow of the Dynamite Kid, Michelle Billington, and we hear from Julie Hart as well. She says that Julie was a mother figure to Michelle when she was younger, and that she used to go to the Stampede wrestling shows with her. She first Julie got her eyes on Bret. She was like, oh, he's cute. And then she saw Tom Billington, who would later be known as the Dynamite Kid. She was only 18 years old when they got married. She talks about a romantic time when they were walking in the snow together, the big white snowflakes in Canada, in Calgary, and it was very romantic feeling, and he was very sweet. And she thought he was like debonair because he had the English accent. She then says she reads a note from Tom saying that he hopes they have a kid soon, but only when she's ready, so that the kids can look after her while he's on the road. And it's very nice. He seemed like a very sweet guy in those beginning stages of their relationship. And she says that he was a different person than what he would later on become to be, especially when they were first dating and the first 5 years of their marriage. We got MW Network also saying, as a Canadian, it's beautiful to see the Canadian pro wrestling history and how the Toronto, Ontario Indies has evolved to this present day. All the talent on TV now and soon to break out to the States. Yeah, it's a great time to be a Canadian wrestling fan, especially if you know the history and the fact that, you have a whole week. We had Warrior Week previously. We had with the Dark Side of the Ring episode, as well as the A&E biography episode on the Ultimate Warrior. And this feels like, you know, Stampede Wrestling Week with the A&E biography Bret Hart edition, and then this Dark Side of the Ring season 3 about the Dynamite Kid. We got Lewis Young saying hi, SB3. Hi to you, good brother. Thank you for joining us here on Facebook. Anyone else, you know, watching us on Facebook right now, you could drop us a like, drop us a heart emoji, leave your thoughts in the live chat. We always like to highlight anybody. If you want to make sure that your comment is featured on this show, definitely you could send a super chat, $1 or more. We will definitely highlight your comment here. But got to talk more about this Dark Side of the Ring review. We then see the oldest daughter of Dynamite Kid, Braun Billington. Great pics of her as a kid with Macho Man and Miss Elizabeth. She basically says that, you know, those were her favorites and she used to follow them around, especially Miss Elizabeth, of course, being a hero to multiple, you know, little girls who were professional wrestling fans. She was basically like wrestling royalty backstage in a lot of ways, in the way she used to hang out with Macho and Liz and be the daughter of the Dynamite Kid. We also see the youngest daughter of Dynamite Kid, Eris Billington, who they definitely have a lot of the features of their mother. Their mother has aged great, and you know the daughters really, you know, take after her in a lot of ways, and they also have like the eyes and the eyebrows of the Dynamite Kid, so they have a lot of features of their mother and their father. We then hear one of the most famous talking heads on this edition of Dark Side of the Ring, former WWE superstar, WWE legend, WWE champion Mick Foley. He was another wrestler who did certain things to stand out, and he puts over the style that Dynamite Kid, basically sacrificing his body. And in a lot of ways, he says that, you know, wrestlers are like magicians because they have to, you know, make something that always doesn't, you know, hurt, look like it hurts and look like it's real. But with Dynamite Kid, if something looked like it hurt, it definitely was because he was sacrificing his body for that. And he really puts over the Dynamite Kid versus original Tiger Mask in Japan, and talks about how he used to search out for those matches. And those matches, in a lot of ways, you know, if for anyone who is new and never seen those matches, you definitely need to go out of your way. Those are like the predecessors to you know, RVD versus Jerry Lynn in ECW, Eddie versus Dean Malenko in ECW, Eddie versus Chris Benoit in WCW. You know, even to this day, you know, the style that Will Ospreay, like we've seen in the live chat, and here he is, Romeo's returning back to us. You know, the Will Ospreay style in a lot of ways is inspired by Dynamite Kid as well. So yeah, he's probably the most influential professional wrestler of the last 25, 30 years, because his style has been copied and mirrored throughout like the last 30, 35 years. And you know, Mick Foley talks about the speed of the moves that Dynamite and Tiger Mask did and the excellence of execution, pun intended. And Foley says he reminded these tapes so much that they broke. He rewinded them so much, and he kind of slowed everything down to see the movement and see how they did things. But that's the point that we're out. What was your thoughts on Mick Foley talking about the Tiger Mask Dynamite Kid matches, Romeo? Oh, I think Romeo lagged again.
Okay. That's 1, 2. How do I? Can you see me? Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. You look good.
Oh boy.
I think it's still lagging for you, but it's all good.
Mick Foley was great here. I like that he repeated what he said in his own biography, where he said if it looked good and looked like it hurt, it's probably because it did. Mick Foley and Dynamite Kid both had the philosophy of standing out by hurting themselves pretty bad.
Yes, I mean Dynamite had more of a speedster type of style, you know, more of like the high flying, hard hitting type of style, while Mick Foley just literally just got over by getting the hell beat out of him. But I don't know if you want me to continue running the show here, Romeo, while you deal with the lagging issue. But I will talk about next. Dave Meltzer, as I said earlier, Uncle Dave was on this edition of Dark Side of the Ring, and he talks about how there's no Jushin Liger, no Eddie Guerrero, no Chris Benoit, Owen Hart without Dynamite Kid versus Tiger Mask. So yeah, and this is very, what I was just saying, the past 30-35 years has been influenced by his style, because a lot of people say, I got my style from Chris Benoit, I got my style from Owen Hart, I got my style from Jushin Liger, but it all traces back to Dynamite Kid versus Tiger Mask. So it's a very influential feud, influential matches that they had in Japan. We got WrestleScope saying this was another heartbreaking episode for sure. I totally agree with that. He also says, as far as the Dynamite Osprey comparison, Dynamite overused steroids, which coupled with his injuries, yeah, it led to bad things. It led to very bad things for him. And Fifth Generation says the Dynamite Kid Tiger Mask matches are so wonderful to watch. Yeah, it's timeless stuff in a bunch of different ways. Like I said, it's a style that is you'll definitely see today, and it's timeless stuff that you can go back and watch, and you could say that it's better than probably 75% of what we see today. Maybe there's stuff in like New Japan or AEW or like top-notch WWE stuff that is a little bit better, but other than that, there's not much that are better than Dynamite Kid versus Tiger Mask in history. So Foley, repeating what he said in his biography, like Romeo said, that if it looked good and it looked like it hurt, it probably definitely did. We get to 1984, where Dynamite Kid's work in Stampede Wrestling and in Japan leads him to entering the WWF. He joins with his cousin Davey Boy Smith, who would later become the British Bulldog, and brother-in-law Bret the Hitman Hart and Jim the Anvil Neidhart, two of the most famous tag teams of all time, the British Bulldogs and the Hart Foundation. Julie mentions that steroids started up to increase his physical appearance. A lot of this documentary, a lot of people talk about how he had more of like a Napoleon complex, where he was a small guy and he tried to make up for that by being more physical in the ring and having a style that made him stand out among the pack. We then hear one of my favorite talking heads of this episode, Dan Spivey, who's a former wrestler formerly known as Waylon Mercy for us 90s new generation fans of the WWF, and he was a former tag team partner of my namesake, Sid Vicious, Sid Justice, Psycho Sid. He was a wrestler and friend of Dynamite Kid. We also get Gary Protz, who was also a wrestler, Scott McGee, and basically they talk about how they used to have steroid parties and partying darts with the needles. Like they used to basically put the steroids in their butt and then try to play darts with the needles. And Dan Spivey laughs and talks about how only wrestlers would do stuff like this. We then see footage of the early days of the British Bulldogs in the WWF, and man, this is like early tag team excellence in the WWF. Like this was the first time that WWF really, really, truly cared about tag team wrestling, and the British Bulldogs, the Hart Foundations, were very much influential in that. We then hear one of my other favorite talking heads of this episode, Jacques Rougeau, one half of the fabulous Rougeau brothers, formerly the Mountie as well. He talked about seeing the needles hanging out of the butt of Dynamite. We even get a little clip of a guy walking around with the needle just flopping around in his ass, which was a crazy visual in my opinion. We then see footage of the British Bulldogs becoming the tag team champions for the first time at WrestleMania 2, defeating Brutus the Barber Beefcake and Greg the Hammer Valentine. So we got a couple of comments here. I gotta read my good brother Romeo. He said, "Whoa, my lag was crazy. It made you sound like a demonic DJ." Sorry, SP3. It's all good, brother. I totally understand. North Korea has never forgiven us for what we talked about with Dark Side of the Ring season 3 this in the last couple of weeks. So it's totally understandable. They're still on Romeo and breaking up his Wi-Fi and his connection with us. So I will do it alone here. Thank you, Romeo. I appreciate it. He's already sent me his notes. This guy's professional. That's why he's the connoisseur of reporting. We got the good brother, John Scott, behind the ones and twos for Powered 4 TV. He says, good afternoon. Brett's Honesty says Dynamite Kid was the best in-ring wrestler he ever worked with, according to him back in 2014 when I spoke to him. He also says, I like this episode very much. We also got Fifth Generation Carney saying, when I was a kid, I always liked Dynamite more than Davey Boy. Oh, well, definitely Dynamite was the stronger performer of the two guys. Like Dynamite Kid, like I said, is so influential, and Davey Boy in a lot of ways tried to mirror what Dynamite Kid was able to do, but couldn't quite keep up with the performer that Dynamite Kid was, in my opinion. But Davey had more of the look, had more of the physique, and that was something that Dynamite Kid always kind of seemed either jealous of or seemed that he wanted to get to, and that's what led to a lot of his steroids and drug use. We then talk about here, and we see footage of the Snake Pit Wrestling Club in Wigan, UK, where Foley assumed that's where he got the crap beat out of him, where he got his resilience from. And they also, a lot of the talking heads talk about how his, upbringing in the professional wrestling business at the Snake Pit made him, want others to go through what he did, and made him a little bit bitter in a lot of ways. We move on to Providence, Rhode Island, where Mick Foley tells a great story about when he was Jack Foley in the early days of his career in the WWF. He was just a jobber with another guy, and they teamed up to verse the British Bulldogs. It was a one-match appearance for Jack Foley, but it was a matchup that would change his career and change the way he looked at wrestling for a very, very long time. Dynamite was a bit stiff with him and gave him a huge left arm clothesline lariat, which dislocated Foley's jaw. Foley took it like a man. He said that he shook the British Bulldog's hands afterwards, and then when he went back to his hotel, he threw up multiple times, and he had to get his jaw fixed later on. Crazy story. If you are messing up Mick Foley and you're one of the first ones that kind of give him an injury, that's a mark of excellence, I guess. We hear from the daughters of Dynamite Kid, and they show off some of the kids, the Dynamite Kid's gear, the old vest, as well as his old robe from when he was the Dynamite Kid. The British Bulldog action figures are also showed, and he says that he used them to be their Ken dolls at the time, which was crazy in my opinion. using Dynamite Kid to be Ken. We will learn why I'm a little bit like I don't think that's the best imagery for the kids at that age, which is, yeah, we'll get to that. We also hear from Dan Spivey talking about of how Dynamite was a ribber and a very funny guy. He used to play jokes and pranks that some people didn't take kindly to, though. They tell us a story about a wrestler named Mitch Snow, who was no relation to Al. Romeo puts in his notes here. He had a mouth on him, and he basically pissed off Dynamite Kid and the British Bulldog, so they decided to play a prank on him. They put sleeping pills into his beer. Dan Spivey talks about how Dynamite Kid used to do this a lot, putting sleeping pills, as he used to call it, gimmicks in people's drinks, and he puts it in Mitch Snow's drink. And Dynamite and Davey Boy take him to his room, and Dynamite leaves a present in his bag. Yes, he takes a shit in his duffel bag and shaved his eyebrows and his head. Mitch is so traumatized by this, he left and went home and basically feared for his life afterwards. Crazy. If a rib goes that well, I guess you could say, I think you're taking it a little bit to the extreme, but that seems to be a part of Dynamite Kid's personality in a lot of ways. We got Andre Corbell says, I'll be talking to Dynamite Kid's daughter later today. Congratulations, good brother. That's awesome. Awesome to hear. You can, send her the link of our review. We loved her. She was great on this review on this episode of Dark Side of the Ring. We also got JMC saying there was no mention of Bret Hart's second wife in his biography. Was there? I think his biography came out before he got married to his second wife, JMC, just in case you were wondering there. So we then move on to more stories about the Dynamite Kid. And yeah, there's a lot of crazy stories to talk about after the Mitch Snow ribbing. In 1986, though, this is where his career kind of takes a turn for the worse. He hurts his back on a mere, like a regular little spot, going off of the ropes. And immediately he goes into emergency surgery. His fourth and fifth lumbar is shredded and 2 discs removed. Back in the ring 2 weeks later, Hart Foundation versus the Bulldogs is for the tag team championships, because when he hurts his back, he is the tag team champion at that time. And Meltzer explains how Bulldog had to carry Dynamite Kid from a wheelchair into the ring. He gets hit with a megaphone on the outside of the ring, and he basically is out of the match the entire time. And Davey Boy works the match to drop the titles to the Hart Foundation. A very interesting story that wasn't told on this Dark Side of the Ring that I did also hear from Uncle Dave Meltzer on Wrestling Observer is that they wanted him to drop the titles to someone else completely. But he was the one that basically pushed and said that he only would drop the titles to the Hart Foundation because he had that much respect for Bret Hart and Jim the Anvil Neidhart, and he thought that they were the right people to drop the titles to at that time. We got Romeo in the comments saying, Jason, did you mean Dynamite Kid's second wife? Yeah, no mention. Yeah, I hope he meant Dynamite Kid's second wife, or I think he's just worried about Bret Hart's wives, like Mark Lloyd was on Monday. Heel Steven saying, I heard stories back then that he used horse steroids. Well, his traps and the way his steroid use was explained in this episode says, yeah, you might be right there. That does make a lot of sense. We also got JMC saying, no, Romeo, I was reading up on the Dynamite Kid, and that showed up about all the relation. Yeah, I don't know about Dynamite Kid's second wife, or if they, had her in his biography, but that's an interesting question, and maybe something I can address after I do research. I can talk about tomorrow on True Hill Heat 129. But we got to go back to this story here. We got Ports talking about, he said that his wife would hear Dynamite Kid whimpering because he took him back to his house. He had him, stay at his house after his surgery, and Dynamite Kid couldn't even lay on the bed. He was more comfortable laying on the floor, and his wife heard him whimpering and crying as he stayed over with them. And so, if sleeping on the floor is where you're most comfortable, you're in extreme pain. Of course, Dynamite Kid rushes through his return into in-ring competition months after surgery, but the frustration from the pain spirals into Tom's home life, which we hear some very, very terrifying stories. And we already addressed some very terrible subjects on last week's Dark Side of the Ring review of Grizzly Smith, but this was a lot to handle as well, talking about the home life of Tom Billington after this surgery. He gets mad at his wife one time when they're going out because she wouldn't drink, but she decides to get like a tonic water, and he gets really pissed with her. He takes her home, and he's driving home, and he's playing chicken on the road, like driving into different cars. And then when they get home, she's about to go to sleep, and he basically takes her out of the bed, and he shoves her in a closet and yelled at her to stay in there, you little yard dog. And she basically spent the night sleeping on the floor in the closet, which was a horrible story to hear, and kind of set an image on what Tom's home life would spiral into. He has a son next, and Michelle, his wife, says it was it calmed Tom for a little bit there as he tried to make up for that incident with the closet. But unfortunately, it did not last long. We then get into the whole saga with Tom Billington and Jacques Rougeau, which all starts at SummerSlam 1988 when it's the fabulous Rougeau brothers versus the British Bulldogs. They basically decide that they're going to have a 20-minute draw of Broadway. They battle to the draw, and we hear Michelle talking about she basically doesn't even want to talk about the incident and the saga that went down with Jacques Rougeau. She's basically tired of it because it's become such a big part of the legacy of the Dynamite Kid. Jock admits he had a different kind of personality, that he liked to talk and joke, but he was upbeat at the same time. He tells a story as he was coming into the locker room. Mr. Perfect asks Jock to play cards with him, and Jock saying he always loved to play cards, so of course he says yes. And as he sits down, we see the image that he explains Dynamite Kid came from behind him and basically slaps him in the back of the head, knocking him to the floor. He then punches him in the face and messes his face up to the point that Jock he said he was more mentally scarred than physically scarred. Jock says he was not looking forward to get revenge, but it made him ill and sick, to the point that anytime he looked at himself in the mirror, he explains that he threw up. So he said that he had to get revenge on Tom Billington to get his respect back. He then tells the story about how he was told basically from his dad before going into a show that he needs to get a roll of quarters and basically use that to punch Tom back in the face. So he punches the Dynamite Kid. He sees him backstage with the roll of quarters in his hand. He explains that Tom has a coffee in his hand, and he's like, "Hey, how you doing?" He's like, "Hey, I'm doing good." He puts his chin up, and he says that he punches him in the face, and he explains that all the blood splatted out of his mouth, and he lost 4 teeth. Ports thinks that it was brass knuckles and not a roll of quarters. Michelle didn't think that that was warranted, knocking his teeth out. And Spivey said that it bothered Tom and his reputation was forever damaged because of this. We got JMC in the comments here saying, "I'm not shocked about that because I heard the 90s cowboys used medicine for horses," talking about what Heel Steven said about taking the horse steroids. We also got Romeo in the live chat here saying, "Nothing like a good locker room fight. Those were the days." Yeah, it seems like it was very, very common practice to have those type of fights in the locker room, and it seems like it happened quite a lot as we hear with Dark Side of the Ring. So much of these fights, and Jacques Rougeau seems to be one of the guys that always has a story about those. Like we saw Jock during the Dino Bravo Dark Side of the Ring episode in season 2, which was, if you haven't seen that one, we did a review on that one as well. That one was truly a memorable one, which would cross over into this episode here, which we'll get to. We also got Romeo saying wrestlers love telling their fight stories when the other guy isn't alive. Also a good point by Romeo there for sure. Yeah, they always get to tell their story a little bit more. We had Scorpio, Scorpio talk about his fight with Road Warrior Hawk in the Collision in Korea episode, and now we got Jacques Rougeau telling his story about punching out Dynamite Kid's mouth. But it seems to be that everybody has the same story about this, so it seems like it was true. But they really talk about how this incident really scarred Tom and really changed his mentality when he was backstage, and like they said, his reputation was forever damaged and was forever scarred after this because he couldn't really get revenge, as we would learn. Tom brought a gun, as Michelle explains, to the house, and he says that Dino Bravo told him that he saw an envelope with Tom's name, address, and pics of his home and his kids. If there's any retaliation, family will be dead, apparently. And it was quite a crazy story. We already heard in the Dino Bravo episode in season 2 of Dark Side of the Ring, Dino Bravo's connection to the mafia and the mob and how that forever changed his life and his career. But to see it cross over into this episode, it makes a lot of sense due to how close Dino Bravo and the Rougeau brothers were. But we would find out that this was a story that was warped due to one individual. Michelle explains how Dynamite Kid and the family had to move after that. Foley said that his life was never the same. Meltzer said that Jacques got his revenge, but Dynamite Kid never got his. Jacques laughs at the whole mafia thing because he knew that Dino was a stooge for the Bulldogs. So he wrote a fake name on a piece of paper and told Dino he had to call that guy every night. And if he don't call him one night, things will be taken care of. He set the whole thing up and he said, "I'm glad it worked." Wow, that was insane to me. That was probably one of the craziest parts of the whole this whole story, this whole episode, was the fact that, you know, Dynamite Kid basically was mentally scarred from Jacques Rougeau getting his revenge on him. But, you know, it not only influenced his reputation in the locker room in professional wrestling, but it impacted his life completely. Like, he was so scared that he had to move from his home. He had to move his family. Like, his family became scared. He got a gun. And it was all a rib, basically. All a rib. So Jacques Rougeau did not get any revenge back, get revenge from Dynamite Kid, which is insane. But that seems like that was the wrestling back in like the 80s and the 90s, it seems. And since my good brother Romeo could not stay with us, you know, he's having the lagging issue, I had to bring in a pitch hitter, someone you guys, a lot of you in the live chat that's joined us from, you know, in the True Hill Heat community. You might know him from Powered 4 TV. He is my co-host for Powered 4 SP3. We had to get a UK representative with us, Mr. John Scott. What's going on, good brother?
Hey, I'm on unfamiliar ground, SP3, and I'm not used to being here. But I thought when in Rome.
I saw your message. It took me a minute. I had to get the link and send it to you as I'm still talking and everything. I think we did that pretty smooth though. So we got a little bit of Powered 4 SP3 on True Hill Heat. What's going on, sir?
I'm good, my friend. I'm good. Happy as always to be here. And I checked out that documentary only just earlier today. Watched it this morning, and lots of, like you've been saying, lots of crazy antics that we've learned about. I guess we kind of knew some of them, but a lot of detail on this episode.
Absolutely. And a lot of stuff like crossing over from like different episodes in the past. Like we'll get into like how the Chris Benoit story kind of trickles into here, how I just talked about the whole Dino Bravo kind of being the stooge of the Bulldogs, and Jacques Rougeau playing a rib, which basically affects Dynamite Kid's the rest of his career and his life. What was your thoughts on Jacques kind of laughing it off and saying that his plan basically worked?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's been so many like different reiterations of that story. I'm like, has he just, because you can get to that kind of stage in your life where you remember things in a version of your mind, and it might just be like the most comforting to him, like the most purest sense. I mean, if he did do that and it was just that, like that little letter, and he kind of, showed Morocco deliberately because he knew he was going to like go back and talk, then I guess genius on his part. But I kind of think there was more to it than he was letting on, because I just don't see Dynamite being that easily phased and scared, like to the point where he moves house, he moves his whole family. I think there was a little bit more to it than that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, they don't let on everything, and it kind of makes for a better story, I guess, by making it sound like it was a rib that kind of worked out for Jacques Rougeau. But we got to talk more about what happened in this episode. We get Tom saying that he's not happy in the WWF, and after the 88 Survivor Series, he basically leaves and he wants to go back to Japan. He keeps getting worse physically, though, which tends to, trickle into his home life. Michelle says that his ligaments weren't even on the bone of on his shoulder. And Tom goes psycho one day on Michelle and basically raises up his arm. Michelle even gets, emotional, talking about how she told him to put his arm down, like, you're going to take your arm out of the socket. And she gets emotional, even like reliving this scene. We also hear from Julie, who says that he gets deeper and deeper into pills and addiction and drinking. Her last memory of Tom is watching hours of wrestling with him and matches of him and Tiger Mask. And then we get to one of the bigger scenes in this episode, where they talk about New Year's Eve of 1991. He shows up in this all white sweatshirt, and it's got blood all over it. His cheek is split open, and it's the first time that his daughter really sees him in this light, and it scares his daughter. He tells her daddy fell down, and Michelle said that she got suicidal, not happy about bringing a son into this life. And she basically gets him a one-way ticket to England to leave. And Tom drags her by the hair across the floor right in front of their kids. He puts her in a wrestling hold in front of the kids as well. Tom says that no, when she says that you need to go, he says no, you should go. And she's the one that's pregnant at the time, so she thinks that it's only right that she stays. But Tom gets angry, and he gets a gun out of the basement, and he says, if you're not out in 15 minutes, I'm gonna blow your fucking head off. She stood her ground and said, no, you're not, with the kids right behind her, all scared. Braun talks about how she had her younger brother with her. He puts the shotgun right to her head, and he calls his bluff and calls the cops while he has the gun on her. And the operator just tells her, if he's giving you the opportunity to leave, then you should leave, which it's insane in my mind, honestly, John. She packs her bags and she leaves. She didn't want to bring that drama to Brett and Julie's, but she basically has no other choice. And she was basically, tired of bringing their drama, to them, but she had no other choice but to go there. What was your thoughts on this whole reliving of this tragic scene, which in a lot of ways, it's like a predecessor and mirrors what would happen years later with Chris Benoit?
Absolutely, mate. I mean, the thing is, this could have gone totally, that was bad what happened. Make no mistake about it, to put it into context, but it could have got even worse. Like, we might have been talking about this whole thing as murders, if it had gone the wrong way. I mean, she, in the documentary, she describes standing up to him, and kind of being to the point where she's on the phone and they're like, okay, he's letting you go, just walk out. And she's like, no, I'm standing my ground. I don't believe he's going to do it. I'm calling his bluff. I mean, she showed a lot of balls for sure, kahunas, to do that in the first place. But yeah, man, it's hard hitting. That story's been, I guess, told a few times. I've read it in a few places. I'm not sure, but I read Dynamite Kid's biography at one point, and I know that there's a version of it in there. But it's I don't know, man. I guess because they recreate some of those scenes, it makes you feel a little bit uneasy about the whole situation that they were living in. I mean, 2 daughters there already. What on earth was going on? But yeah, it's a sad state of affairs, SB3.
It's insane. Like, I've never read any of the documentaries. Like, my knowledge of Dynamite Kid was very sparse. I knew of his how influential he was in wrestling, but a lot of the stuff that he did, outside of the ring, I wasn't a privy to. I'm not of the, you guys in the UK probably are more familiar because he's an icon in UK wrestling, but this was insane. And this was I knew, like I said earlier in this review, I knew that he was like a predecessor and an influence on Chris Benoit, but I didn't know it went that far. Like, this is a lot to take in, and it's it very much mirrors what would happen years later, where it went to the extreme with Benoit. in the live chat here, John, we got WrestleScope saying, man, what a different world 1980s wrestling was. Sadly, I know guys that are stuck in that mindset still. Romeo also says, I didn't understand Meltzer there. Dynamite Kid started the whole thing. Jock evened it. What the what the fuck does Dynamite need revenge for? Because he punched his
Yeah,
teeth out. He punched his teeth out. You gotta go.
yeah.
It's always about, you know, the escalation of stuff there, in my opinion. Do you think that Dynamite had a right to get revenge on Jock?
I don't know, because I kind of saw it as 1-for-1. It's like, you know, like,
True.
and the thing is, the way it was described, I mean, I don't think it couldn't have been like that. Surely he gets called over to play a card game, and then Dynamite just comes up behind him and just belts the crap out of him, and that's how it gets going. I kind of, I don't know. I've kind of listened to so many different stories. It's hard to know what to believe. He said, she said in the wrestling, but obviously Dynamite had that track record of being a bit of a bully, but I kind of feel like he's one of those guys that maybe once he'd got him back, there was a kind of a respect thing about getting him back the way he did it. But who knows? I mean, when you watch and hear the rest of this stuff, you don't know. I mean, he could have escalated if he hadn't heard about this mafia business. Maybe it would have gone to the next stage. And I'm guessing that Vince, as as tolerant as he was back then, probably would have had to show him the door a lot earlier. And that's the other crazy thing as well, SP3. Like, I know that they don't really mention too much about the management, but like the agents and that, but I'm sure there was more to it where those guys heard about it. And, you know, I'm sure something would have been said. I know back then the locker room was a lot different, but I'd still think there was something in between.
Yeah, and I think because of the way Jock kind of explains his personality, I think it was more of maybe Jock said something that he doesn't even like remember him saying, because he just had that type of personality about him that pissed Dynamite Kid off, and that's what led to that first altercation, in my opinion. By the way, Jock kind of explains the story. We got a lot of love for you in the live chats, John. We got Romeo saying, John with the hot tag. Yes, he's Robert Gibson right now. He was saving me while I was Ricky Morton there, taking the beating.
Except I'm the jobber, Romeo. You're the main star. I'm just the jobber coming in, getting an easy payday for wrestling, in the wrestling terms.
Absolutely. We got Fifth Generation saying, good to see John. We got Mark Lloyd continuing his love affair in the live chat. He says,
oh my goodness,
nice to see Julie again.
I forgot about that.
I'm gonna say it like he's probably saying it while he's writing it. Nice to see Julie again.
I mean, Julie's got a lot of love this week. I'm guessing her social media might have blown up in these last 5-6 days, you know? Maybe she doesn't know what hit her. You know, we might see a different side to Julie soon. I don't know. I don't know how she'll take this, but she's certainly popular.
But funny enough, I was watching this with my wife, and my wife said that, you know, no offense to Julie, but Michelle aged a lot better. Michelle is the younger sister, but she aged a lot better than Julie. Yep. And, you know, considering what her marriage was like, damn, that says a lot about Brett and Julie's marriage.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Romeo responding to Mark saying, I bet it was, Mark. I bet it was. We got Jason Michael Campbell saying, yeah, I agree, Mark, but it was nice to see your sister as well. What?
Oh my goodness. It's really kicking off now.
I think he did put her sister. I was like, when did Mark Lloyd and Julie get married? Like, I know they're married in the live chat here, but that escalated quickly. We got Romeo saying Dynamite with the road rage, a more serious case of CTE, and that would have been a homicide suicide. Yeah, 100% that it could have got a lot worse than it was. So I understand the operator saying, you know, if he's giving you the chance to leave, then leave. But it's like, wouldn't the cops be called to go there to kind of see if the thing can settle? But different time. Different, you know, the early 90s is a totally different time, especially in Canada, I guess. I don't know. So going back to this episode, we hear that Tom leaves to England finally, leaving his family in Calgary. Michelle finally has her last child, her daughter Amris, which means gift from God, and she says that Amris saved her life. Tom has a retirement match in Japan. And then Michelle says, thank God he didn't come back. He probably knew he was out of control and didn't want to present that side to them again. We hear a little bit from Dan Spivey about bare knuckle fighting to survive that Dynamite Kid did, and he didn't talk about his family to anyone at that time. We then see footage of 1996, him making his return comeback match in Michinoku Pro, and man, it's so
That
drastic.
was hard.
Yeah, that was really hard to see when you see him at his heights in the 80s, a part of the British Bulldogs, looking in, ridiculous shape. And then to see him kind of look like he was sick at that time in 1996, or, during his comeback match. Meltzer said that it was sad and he looked like a shell of himself, and he looked emotional walking to the ring, much skinnier. What was your thoughts on, you being a UK fan, seeing Dynamite Kid at his heights and then seeing him in 1996 in Japan?
Yeah, that was kind of really uncomfortable. I mean, first of all, like, just to take it back a little bit more, they were talking about Dynamite when he was doing like supposed legit fights just in the middle of nowhere in the UK, with like something out of a film like you'd have seen in a cheesy 80s kind of action blockbuster with a load of cars with their lights on as a surrounding, and then just beating the hell out of one another. And you get from that kind of to him returning, it was just like, man, like it was very sad. That's the only way I can describe it, because he didn't, it wasn't that he just looked weaker. He kind of, the way he was wrestling, it was almost like he was in pain. I mean, the clips I saw of it, I can't remember the last time I watched that match, but from what I remember of it fully, he was barely able to do a lot. I mean, the other guy was doing most of the stuff, and he just looked in pain. And I guess, he maybe thought it was a good idea just to say goodbye, but man, it was tough to watch that. And yeah, it's like, what has happened in that time?
It's just crazy how fast things can, change in your life, your physique, and it's all gone. Like you were on top of the world, one of the famous wrestlers in Canada, and then into the WWF, and then you turn into like a bare knuckle fighter, and then you come back to professional wrestling and you don't look anything like you did when you were at the top. We've seen it multiple times, but I feel like this was one of the more drastic differences that you saw.
100%.
It's crazy.
Yeah, 100%. It was uncomfortable, and like you're saying, Japan. That's where his bread and butter was. I mean, that's where he was, I think, most respected. Even amongst the talent as well. And I can't imagine, I would have loved to have had another talking head that was like actually kind of around at that time in that locker room, just of like what the feeling was when this guy rocks up as he does, because I'm sure there was a feeling of like, hang on a minute, who the hell's just come through this door? There must have been.
Yeah, for sure. When you see the difference, it's just insane. It very much looked like he was sick at that time. We got Romeo in the live chat here says, John, you're like the British Bulldog carrying me back to my wheelchair.
Before the match to get pinned,
We then got Rambo saying, I love that era of tag teams, SP3. He also says, can you say more about what tag team wrestling was back then? I mean, this was the first glory days of tag team wrestling, when the British Bulldogs and the Hart Foundation were at their heights. Like, they were having state-of-the-art type wrestling matches, and then, they're mixing it up so much, and then the Rockers come in who bring a totally different style, who are more like fast-paced, high flying, while the British Bulldogs are more like hard hitting, as well as you got the intensity of Dynamite Kid, you got the power of Davey Boy Smith, then you got the Heart Foundation, as we talked about on Monday with the A&E biography, where Brett is the more technical, he can hit the drop kicks, he's very smooth in the ring, while Anvil is very hard hitting. Who was the tag teams that stood out the most to you during those days, John?
Well, I'm going to be a bit biased, and obviously I'm going to say the Heart Foundation stood out to me quite a lot with the Bulldogs, because those two teams, I remember having that old VHS cassette of the Bulldogs, and most of their matches were just with the Heart Foundation. I mean, every single time. And they never seemed to have a bad match. They almost worked like Stampede as well. I think WWF at the time just said, you just do what you were doing back then and show us what you can do. And I think that's where the pace started to pick up a little bit more. I think just because all four of them were quite happy to do that with one another. But it was a golden age of tag team wrestling. There's no doubt about it. It was as popular. Some of those teams were as popular as like some of the big main event draws. I mean, LOD at one time, that music, it was as popular as like hearing the Ultimate Warriors music when it came out. The pop was just humongous. And there was so many different variations, but they were just tag teams. They weren't just thrown together. I mean, you can go from the comedy acts of the Bushwhackers, you can go from the Rougeos, there was just a whole other dimension. But again, it was much more credited back then, whereas in today's realm, not so much.
It's true. It's totally different. Where in the WWE they kind of don't care about tag team wrestling. Where that's why a lot of people credit and give praise to AEW, because the tag teams are more like the main eventers. You got the Young Bucks, you got Moxley and Kingston, and those are guys who are having like the best matches, where tag team wrestling is starting to get back to what it was in those days. But this was like the first time, like you said, where tag team wrestling was really big, where you could watch WWF and you had the Bulldogs and the Heart Foundation. You could watch and Jim Crockett Promotions, and they had the Road Warriors, they had the Horsemen. So this was a very great time to be into tag team wrestling, especially for the old school wrestling fans. This is where it really came to prominence. We got Rachel Cornell saying, "What's going on? Romeo looks different."
Very different.
Very different, and he has an English accent. We got Fifth Generation saying at the end he was just as skinny as he was in the snake picture at the beginning. Yeah, it was crazy how he kind of reverted back to how he was, like going off of the steroids for years and being sick. It totally changes how you look overall. And then we got Romeo saying, reminded me of how much Lex Luger's body changed too. Yeah, Lex Luger,
good point,
is another one that really had that scary change in how his body looked. We got JMC saying, I was just wondering whatever happened to the Dynamite Kid after the WWE, and now I know. Yes, now you do know. We again got to get back to this episode. He couldn't get surgery for his injuries, too much scar tissue. There was too much scar tissue to operate, so he didn't want anyone to see him in a wheelchair. So he just stayed in the wheelchair, stayed in his home for a very, very long time, away from the public, and a lot of his friends and his family did not hear from him for a very long time. We then talk about Michelle having the interview with the Chris Benoit documentary. The Chris Benoit tragedy happens, and this is when Michelle finally opens up publicly about Tom's domestic violence. We see footage of the CNN documentary that they did, The Death Grip on professional wrestling, and she has to tell her kids before she does her interview, and it had quite the effect on them, especially Amris, who was never around her father. And she said that her mother put her father in such a beautiful light and only told her the good things about her dad, and then she had to break that news to her about all the domestic violence that she experienced, and it totally changed her perspective on her father. Brown, though, she wants to get that connection back with her father after she has her own child, and she realizes, she has some happiness for a little while when she has her first child, but the thing that's missing is her father. She goes to visit him, and she hadn't seen him at that time in over 15 years. She breaks down crying as soon as she sees him in a wheelchair, and she says that he tells her that he's sorry, and she calls it the only time he's ever apologized for anything, and they hold hands and they cry together. How did that scene, that was very like an emotional scene. You could tell that his oldest daughter, it was a moment that she will never forget, and it really meant a lot to her, John.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough spot, isn't it? If you're the mum, it's kind of like you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. I get why she kept it. And I mean, you've got to kind of credit her in some ways that when she was pregnant, this horrific stuff was going on, but yet she kind of felt like, even though he wasn't in their lives, which I think she was quite grateful for by the end of it, I think that she still wanted to paint a light of her father, and not this kind of terrible, events that were going on. But however, obviously, once the Chris Benoit tragedy happened and she got interviewed, she had to come out and tell them. And I think it's just, it would have been tough to hear that, I'm sure, for her youngest. No doubt about it, when you've got this like perception in your mind of what your dad was. And you can imagine SP3 like growing up through school and everyone's asking like, where's your dad and what did your dad do, and you're saying, oh, he's this wonderful guy, he was a wrestler, you can watch him here, there and everywhere. And then all of a sudden you get told he wasn't quite like that after all, and it was very much the opposite in terms of the home life, for sure. So it's a hard thing. I think I think she was in a tough spot. I mean, in what to do, because again, if she'd have been too honest, you could have said, oh, she was biased or whatever. So I think you got to credit her a little bit more with that.
Yeah, absolutely. She definitely deserves a lot of credit for, just wanting to keep their father in a good light for them, so they don't grow up with a resentment toward him. But as soon as she has to do that interview, it kind of changes everything, especially for Amherst. We got Fifth Generation in the comments. We got a bunch of old school wrestling fans in the live chat here, John, saying, don't forget
Shout
about
Killer Bees. Great team.
Yeah, absolutely. We got JMC saying
one of my favorites.
Absolutely. He said they could do a whole Dark Side of the Ring on just the Von Erichs alone. They did do a whole Dark Side of the Ring on the Von Erichs. Sir, you should definitely look it up. It's a great episode, probably arguably the best episode of season 1 of Dark Side of the Ring. And we did a review on it right here on the True Hill Heat YouTube channel. So check that out as well.
Check it out.
So we then hear that Dynamite Kid was sick and he had a stroke soon after he passes away. This was very with Scott, the wrestler Scott McGee talking about it. He gets emotional and doesn't even want to really talk about reliving, how his friend died. Amherst gets emotional talking about of how her mom said, well, now he's always beside you. And she said when she first heard, she didn't cry, but as soon as her mom said that and hung up the phone, it really got to her because that was all she ever wanted. Poor Scott McGee says details the story of Spivey calling him to say that Spivey calling Dynamite and saying that he loved him, and Dynamite asking him why. That someone who says they love you, you're asking them why because you don't think you're a good person. How can you imagine like being in that type of mind state, John?
No, not at all. I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's very difficult to put yourself in his shoes because you just can't. I don't think anybody really can, if we're being honest. And we've heard some awful stories about the guy, but I think I would imagine at that phase in his life, he was really messed up in thinking. I don't know that he could have probably comprehended. I mean, with all the drug use and all the rest of it back in the day, and some of those images that we saw as well. Like, I know that wasn't the images, but the way they were painting the picture, it's like, who knows what his memories were and weren't, and what triggered that to go on this downward spiral. But there was definitely something deep rooted there, for definite. I would imagine growing up, for sure.
Yeah, yeah, he had a lot of issues, and definitely he was a victim of CTE, and it was too
Mm,
early to even
yeah.
diagnose him with. We get Dave Meltzer talking about he will never get the full credit, Dynamite Kid, for what he brought to the world of wrestling because it's a sad story to tell and it doesn't have a happy ending. Michelle says, let it go to all the fans. She says, let her kids heal. Talk about CTE, the signs of depression, but don't knock him. She says it pisses her off that he said he hopes his children are proud of his work. She says that they needed a father, not a wrestler. But as she grew older, she understood that's what he wanted to give his kids. Mick Foley then says he's forgotten by the hands of time, but those that saw him in his prime will never forget it. Bruce Springsteen said, "Trust the art, not the artist," and Dynamite Kid, not the first nor the last that will suffer for the sake of his art. A lot of people who are great at something are not necessarily great in all aspects of their life, which was very profound words by Foley. He says that they find solace in doing what they do, but they pay for that brief time. You become a bigger star than you could have ever imagined, but you pay for it every day for the rest of your life, which was, very
Mm,
touching, very
yep.
endearing words to close out this episode of Dark Side of the Ring. We got in the comments here, John, Fifth Generation saying Greg the Hammer Valentine, Carrie and Brutus the Barber Beefcake, talking about that tag team.
Mm.
We hear Jason Michael Campbell saying, well, he keeps saying about the Von Erichs. Says, I can't give credit to AEW; they're trash. See, this is what we were talking about on Powerful SP3, John.
Blimey, don't get that started again. Crikey, we'll be all day.
People who
Yeah,
don't like AEW judging them.
exactly. That's the reality we live in. I'll throw you. I've just been looking up some old tag teams because there's loads. How about the Wild Samoans?
Yeah.
Obviously the fabulous Freebirds. I know they weren't WWF, but just to name a few going on there. And Earthquake was always one of my favorite with Typhoon. I always loved that combination. My figures of those two guys are just like, who the hell's going to beat these two? It's crazy. One of the most ridiculous ones, though, SP3 offer, which came a lot later, by the way, was the incredible Owen Hart with what was that team called? Oh my god, with Coco.
High
Was it
energy, wasn't it? With
High Energy? My goodness, and that attire, wow, that
Coco
was amazing.
Beware and Owen Hart with the
Damn,
suspenders and everything. Great stuff. Great stuff. Great memories there.
yeah.
We got Tamara S. Battles in the comments on Facebook. Thank you for joining us. She said, I guess she's saying, I didn't know Dynamite had did all of that. I didn't either. This was very, very enlightening for me. We got Jason Michael Campbell saying, if the oh man, more hate on AEW, I guess. He says, if the Young Bucks put other people over, I might like AEW. This is how we can tell, JMC, you've never watched AEW, because all they did for the first year of the company was put over other tag teams like the Lucha Bros, like Santana and Ortiz. He says, I might like AEW, but they only think about themselves. That's the trouble when they book their own matches. And this is how we can tell you don't watch. We got Romeo saying, I thought we'd get through a review without trashing AEW in the comments. I thought wrong. And then he has a great question for us, John. He says, will Dynamite Kid be in the WWE Hall of Fame?
Well, the thing is, you think about who's in there. I mean, I don't know what standards there are anyway, to be honest with you. Like, if we're talking about the standard of Hulk Hogan and a couple of others, I'm like, exactly. I mean, I think personally what they could do, and this is maybe what they should and not will, is just have the British Bulldogs go in from that angle as opposed to maybe Dynamite on his own, because it was always the tag team anyway with them two. I would do it that way, but I wouldn't expect it anytime soon, especially now with this just coming out. No chance, not within the next 5-6 years. The thing is, SP3, there's no need to kind of call and draw that attention to themselves because he's not around. Nobody's campaigning, I don't think, for the Dynamite Kid. I think that's one of I mean, like Dave Meltzer ended that nobody will really look back at his career. That's probably one of the tragedies of it. I think, although this guy was not the most nicest of people out there for sure, but what he gave to wrestling, especially in the Stampede days, again, I think he was so ahead of his time, as you said at the start of the show. I mean, the stuff they were doing now, I don't think you'll get much better than that, quite frankly. I honestly don't. I think the pace they were doing ladder matches before anyone else as well. It was crazy. And a lot of it has to be owed to him, because I think a lot of people that I speak to always go back to Ricky Steamboat and Macho Man as being the sort of breakout guys. But realistically, it actually come from Stampede, a lot of that, and those matches. And they kind of lifted that intensity, that pace within the WWF back then.
Absolutely. They brought a totally different ring style to them and really brought in what would become the standard. What's the standard of today? And I agree with you. Dynamite Kid, it's so influential in professional wrestling. It's really the popularized style of today's wrestling, and he's going to be forgotten by the strands of time because of what he did outside of the ring. And it's similar to the story of Chris Benoit as well, ironically enough.
Yep.
He was inspired by Dynamite Kid, and he went down the same path. We got Fifth Generation saying, I think he should be in the Hall of Fame, but I don't think he will be in the Hall of Fame. We got Elizabeth Stallion, one of the elite good eggs from over on Wrestling Daily, joining us in the live chat. Thank you for joining us, Lizzie. She says they put Davey Boy Smith in there, so can't see why they wouldn't put British Bulldogs in there. You need to watch this episode of Dark Side of the Ring. There's a couple of reasons why WWE might steer clear of not putting the Dynamite Kid in there in any type of way, not even as the British Bulldogs. We got the Streak Saver saying he should be inducted by Jacques Rougeau.
Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that? Him coming out there with like a knuckle duster on instead of the coins that he supposedly had.
Oh,
my
man.
goodness.
That's horrible. We got Romeo saying they took them long enough just to put in Bulldog in. Yeah, it did take them a long time, way years after his passing, before they put the Bulldog into the Hall of Fame. And we know the whole saga with Owen Hart not being in the Hall of Fame because of how his tragic death. So there's reasons why, but it's sad. It's sad to that a lot of fans will never know these guys' contributions to the world of professional wrestling. We got also Lizzie saying, not sure Dynamite Kid could get in by himself, though. Yeah, 100%. I don't see that ever happening, especially with the WWE Hall of Fame. We got Fifth Generation saying Dynamite Kid was one of the best wrestlers of all time. Yes, definitely one of the best and most influential, especially because of the style that is so popular nowadays. And then we got Romeo saying they didn't really touch on Davey Boy Smith's relationship with Dynamite Kid. Guess with him fresh in the Hall of Fame, the family didn't want to touch this story. What do you think, John? Do you think that the family just didn't want to get involved in this whole documentary? I do know that Bret Hart was asked to be a part of this documentary, but he wasn't happy with the Montreal Screwjob episode, so he decided to stay clear.
Wow, that was his reason. It doesn't surprise me. I mean, but Bret's been quite open about it anyway, even in his own book when I read it, because he talks about the Dynamite's book and how kind of when Dynamite Kid wrote his biography, he was very much in the downward spiral. He was in the wheelchair at this time, and I'm guessing he was just sitting at home with the editor just writing this stuff. And I know he kind of never really thanked anybody in it, including Stu Hart and all these guys that kind of brought him over in it. And obviously the stuff between him and Davey was never great towards the end. So it was a book that was done at a very downward time in his life. I don't think it was a true complexion, but yeah, Bret not being in it, I kind of feel like they did need a couple of different types of talking heads. I think they could have done without Dave Meltzer, to be honest with you, and put someone else in. I like the fact Mick Foley was there because he's kind of very grounded in what he says, and obviously he had a personal connection with that match, my God, as Jack Foley. But overall, I think they could have maybe done with somebody from within maybe the Hart family, maybe not just Brett, but somebody else that was quite close to him. Because I'm sure there would have been someone around that was maybe willing to, or maybe there just wasn't. But I would have liked to have heard that side of it personally.
Yeah, I think they should have got like Ross Hart because he was
Yeah.
a promoter in the Stampede Wrestling days, and
Mm-hmm.
he could have gave it from that perspective. He could have been a good contributor to this
Mm-hmm.
episode here. But we got to get into the MVP, the LVP, and our rating for this episode of Dark Side of the Ring Season 3. Continue putting your comments in the live chat. Let us know what you thought MVP, LVP, and the rating for this episode was. Of course, if you're watching this on demand, you could put that down in the comment section below. But John, who was your MVP out of all the talking heads on this Dark Side of the Ring Season 3, the Dynamite Kid episode?
Man, it's a tough one. This is because there's a few very important people. I might have to cheat this one, SP3, on your show. I might have to cheat this. I might have to go for all three daughters here because I kind of feel like there was a lot brought into them from their point of views, and you had one that hadn't really seen it, but then she opens up and kind of sees it in our eyes. She's kind of only hearing about it with us, which is an interesting way of looking at it. And then you've got the eldest daughter that actually traveled over to England, and I think for her, she kind of felt to me, SP3, she felt there was closure at least towards the end when she was sitting there with him. So it was like, I kind of enjoyed that dynamic. I wish they would have kind of stayed more with the family rather than some of this other stuff where it just kind of come out of nowhere. And for a 45-minute program, I think they could have maybe have gone a different way with the narrative. But I'm cheating. I'm going with all three, I'm afraid.
You're going with the two daughters and Michelle?
I'm going with the mum. Yeah, I'm going with all three.
I'm going to go co-MVP as well, but I'm going to go with Michelle Billington because she had to relive a lot of traumatic stuff in her life. And Jacques Rougeau, because that Jacques Rougeau Dynamite Kid saga needed to be talked about on this episode, in my opinion, because that is one that, I didn't know too much of the information about Dynamite Kid here, but that was one of the stories that I've heard, versions of for years. So to hear it from one of the people involved in it, and Jacques Rougeau is such a good storyteller. We learned that in the Dino Bravo episode, and he brought that here, and I felt like he was a great contributor to the episode. So who was your LVP out of the talking heads, or the LVP of the story? Because I have Romeo put in his notes here, his LVP wasn't one of the talking heads. His LVP was Dino Bravo for being a stooge to the Bulldogs and falling for Jacques Rougeau's trick.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's why I think, I don't know if it was that simplistic. I think that's why I kind of think there was more to it. I'm going to say in this particular episode, who I felt brought very little to it than what he should be, was Dave Meltzer, because I want it from Dave Meltzer. I want to hear the more wrestling aspect of it. So when he's talking about Japan and that, I get that. That's his bit. But when he's adding these extra things like, he should have got revenge on him, and all the rest of it, I'm like, hang on a minute, he shouldn't be talking like this. What on earth is going on? He's giving his own personal spin on it all of a sudden. So I'll say Dave Meltzer, poor old Uncle Dave on this one. I don't normally, because I feel like sometimes he does bring stuff, but I was hoping he would kind of educate us more in what was going on over in Japan at the time. That might just be the way the editing was done. So I'll let him off a little bit, but he's my LVP, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna probably have to agree with you. We could have got more, and I feel like a lot of lately with the Dave Meltzer's contributions, whether it be on Dark Side of the Ring or the A&E biography, I want more from him. He's supposed to be this historian. He's supposed to be knowledgeable. I feel like we should be getting more from the times that he has used. So I will have to go with my Uncle Dave Meltzer, unfortunately, as the LVP of this episode. And out of 10, John, what did you give Dark Side of the Ring, the Dynamite Kid episode?
It's a tough one as well. I see, and as well, I don't know your scoring range, SP3. I mean, I don't know what
out of 10.
Yeah, but I don't know what you've already given. I mean, as a solo document, I'm gonna say I'll give this a 6.5. 6.5 for me. Purely because there was a lot of stuff that I think has been introduced to a lot of newer fans, like in our audience today, that didn't know any of this stuff. Obviously, a little bit older than myself, I kind of known all this, but I do think this has kind of shed a different light on the whole thing, which is probably a good thing. But I do kind of feel like it lacked that narrative sometimes. Like some of it was going off in a tangent elsewhere, and I think it's difficult because it is only like 45 minutes of pure documentary, so it's like you've got to try and get as much in as you can. But yeah, 6.5.
That is fair. That is fair. I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10. I thought that this was one of the stronger episodes of Dark Side of the Ring season 3. I think if I had to rank it, I would put Brian Pillman episode was, I would say Grizzly Smith is number 1 for season 3 as far as the best episode and the episode I learned the most about. I would say Pillman would be number 2. And then I would probably put I would probably put this at number 3. I think the weakest episode was the Ultimate Warrior episode because of the timing with it coming, after the A&E biography episode for the Ultimate Warrior. So I can understand a little bit of the reasons why that was one of the weaker ones. I thought Nick Gage was a great storyteller in his episode, and I learned a lot in the Collision in Korea episode. So those two are kind of like in the middle, but I would say this is right behind the Pillman and the Grizzly Smith episode as one of the better episodes of Dark Side of the Ring season 3. So I got to give it a 8 out of 10. Like I said, I think his family were great during this episode. They added a lot of perspective. We learned a lot about his career. So I really enjoyed this episode, and I thought it was very, very strong in my opinion. We got to go through a couple of comments here. We got Rachel Cornell saying, what about the actual dog? Hey, didn't he abuse it? And then the Streak Saver answering this saying, Matilda the dog will be in the Hall of Fame before Dynamite Kid. And then Romeo responding to that saying, oof, or should I say, woof.
What kind of dog he's got. Yeah, there were stories about, what I've heard, I know he's not very popular on this show, but Jim Cornette, I've heard him talk about that poor dog, and Davey was really good with it, but Dynamite would torment the hell out of it, and there was rumors about him giving it steroids and stuff like that. That was in a few books I'd read as well, which is terrible to think about it now, the poor animals. I mean, some of these animals, man, like Jake Roberts and all the rest of it, you're like, oh my God, what, in this day and age today, man, you'd have probably been locked up.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's horrible. I know now, I know why they didn't address that, because that would have got them so much heat for even talking about it on Dark Side of the Ring. That's even more touchy than last week's episode talking about incest and all that other being a pedophile. I think abusing a dog is worse than that, honestly, and nowadays. We got also here, we got WrestleScope saying Dino Bravo and Dynamite Kid plus Miss Elizabeth in Hall of Fame 2022. I doubt all of those. I'm just going to say that. I doubt pretty much all of those WrestleScopes, but WrestleScope says he gives it an 8.5 out of 10. Rachel Cornell here, let me go to hers. She says she gives it a 5 out of 10. She says, what about the dog Matilda? He gave it steroids. Oh my God, that's
what I heard.
That's rough. That's
not
rough.
good. Yeah.
Rough, very rough. We got WrestleScopes giving his ranking saying Grizzly Smith at number 1. He says Pillman 2, Dynamite 3. I agree. And Warrior last. Yeah, I agree with all of those there. WrestleScopes. We got Rachel Cornell saying Johns, is you ever meet him or watch him wrestle?
Jesus, how old am I? Well, I'm not. I wasn't. I certainly wasn't born in time to watch the Dynamite Kid in his heyday. That's for sure. Certainly not in '96. However, I have seen the Dynamite Kid, and it might have been one of his last appearances at a wrestling show. It was in 2002, and there was a show called Revival, which was on like a mainstream TV. It's when British wrestling was just coming back, basically. And it was a guy from TalkSport, Tommy Boyd, who co-promoted, and they wanted to have a big special guest, and the big special guest was going to be the Dynamite Kid. Man, it was tough to watch because I was there, and he just gets wheeled out in this wheelchair. He didn't look like he really wanted to be there, to be honest with you. It was weird because that was a time where Eddie Guerrero was involved in this tournament. He handed Jody Fleisch the King of England. That's where he won it. That's where he got the name and the moniker from. And he faced Eddie Guerrero in the finals. Doug Williams was there as well. But just to hear about that documentary when they were saying like the sort of, what the Dynamite legacy was, a lot of those guys, they were all kind of Dynamite influenced in a lot of ways. There was a sort of bit of everything. But it was a strange show. I think Brian Christopher was there that night as well. That was the stage. Do you remember where Eddie fell out of love with WWF for about 6-7 months? And then he went away. That was then. But yeah, that was the last time I saw the Dynamite Kid. And yes, they did like a meet and greet. I kind of said hello to him, but he was a shadow, I'm sure, of his pure self. He was not happy. It was almost like you're just here for the sake of it, wave, and we take you back kind of thing. It was a kind of a sad thing, but it is interesting. I would say the UK in general was a fan base that we cherish the British Bulldog, as you well know, SB3, very highly because of SummerSlam and stuff like that. But Dynamite Kid, it's kind of sad because he was always around for like 10, 15 years living in this country, but it was very rare anybody could ever get an interview with him or go and see him. He did not want to be near it. And I guess like it's odd because if you were classing it on wrestling, you'd say Dynamite Kid, pound for pound, is definitely one of the greatest UK wrestlers of all times. Like ahead of Davey Boy, I would say that. But in terms of superstar, obviously Davey, because he had everything come after. But yeah, it's an interesting one to look at perspective in the UK about Dynamite, because I think they wanted to give him more, but they was always very much like held back because of the past,
Yeah, no, it's understandable, but I do agree with you. Like work rate rise, I think that's not really a debate. That Dynamite Kid showed a little bit more than Davey Boy, but star wise, it's totally different. We got Russell's go put an interesting question here. He says, "Who was treated worse in the '80s wrestling, animals or women?" Oh,
that's a hard one, that isn't it?
I don't even want to answer that one. We got Romeo saying great half season by Dark Side of the Ring, Korea, Pillman, Grizzly, my favorite episodes. Looking forward to second half, especially Plane Ride from Hell. Need a break though. There was a lot of darkness. Yeah, the Plane Ride from Hell it's going to be a great episode. The Steroid Trials is going to be a fantastic episode. That is like really when I started like watching wrestling. So to know going on at that time, I'm gonna be very fascinated by that one. Which one have you heard about in the second half of season 3 are you looking forward to, John?
I would say the Plane Ride, because it's a little bit light-hearted, I think, compared to a lot of this other stuff. Like, my God, I think like the last couple of weeks has been quite gritty with what we've been given. So it's like you kind of need, like, I felt like the North Korea one, although it was kind of like bad, it was a little bit more light-hearted, so you can kind of go along with that. But some of this stuff is just, I mean, Grizzly last week was, what a monster he was, and then you see some of this stuff with Dynamite. I kind of feel like we need a little bit of light-hearted stuff. The steroid trial will definitely be interesting. I'm very curious as to who the talking heads will be, who's going to come out on that one, because I'm guessing if they tried to, do they have access with Hogan or not?
I don't think so. I think Hogan's only doing like WWE stuff.
I was gonna say, because if he comes on that, he ain't going back to see Vince anytime soon.
Like, you bring this up, I'm not gonna be talking to you. We're not gonna use you for anything. I'm gonna be the host of any WrestleMania anytime soon. We got Generation saying the Frontier Martial Arts episode should be awesome on the second half of season 3. We also got Russell Scope saying, will you guys be reviewing the China Vice show? Yes, we are definitely going to be reviewing that. That's going to be next week on June 17th. They're going to do a special, I think it's a 2-hour episode on the life and the ending of the career of China, which it's already separate from Dark Side of the Ring because they have so much footage that they want to get into with that one. So that should be very good. We're going to definitely have a review on that. We got Rachel Cornell saying Beyond That Mat. Yes, we're going to do Beyond the Mat as well. John has also requested us to review that. So me and the gang are going to get together. We're going to review the Beyond the Mat documentary as well. So we're listening to you guys in the live chat. We thank you guys for joining us on this Dark Side of the Ring season 3 review. John, thank you so much for pitch hitting. Thank you so much for making the hot
You're
tag.
welcome, buddy.
Please tell the people where they can find you on social media and, of course, Powered 4 TV.
Yeah, I'm the most active on Instagram, so you can find me at John_Scott with 2 T's _IV. I'll be on Instagram, and of course, all the great content from back here, powered4.tv, wrestling streaming on demand, over 25 promotions, powered4.tv. Go and check it out and use the special code that way, SP3, for 50% off. 50% off. Great deal. And obviously loads of shows. Chicagoland Championship Wrestling happening tomorrow. So really looking forward to getting in some new stuff.
TNT Extreme about to make their comeback. There's a lot of great content at Powered 4 TV. They're doing great things. And of course, you can also go over to Powered 4 TV YouTube channel for myself and John Scott every week on Powered 4 SP3. We go live 11 a.m. Eastern time, 4 p.m. UK time on Wednesdays, but you can watch it on demand right now. The latest episode with myself and John, we're previewing NXT in your house, talking about the latest in professional wrestling, talking a little bit about the releases, SummerSlam news. There's a whole bunch of stuff. We broke the news on the WWE releases last week, so there's plenty of great content on Powered 4 SP3 and Powered 4 TV YouTube channel with Big Fight Weekly. They got a whole bunch of coverage on Mayweather and Logan Paul.
Don't mention that word.
Thomas out there, Red Thomas. I know he's gonna watch. He's not watching.
Oh my God, he's going to be angry when he finds out I was on here. Now he would have this would have been an opportune moment to come here, but I don't think he's here. So but you've jinxed it now. Who knows?
He's gonna come in the comment section, I'm sure. So please, Brett, leave your comment.
I'm sure there'll be something related to the Dynamite Kid that you can think of to put him in this one. I'm sure there is.
You think Logan Paul was influenced by the Dynamite Kid? Like
exactly. So he got his YouTube from.
Fifth Generation says, thanks for a great review. Hope everyone has a great day. We hope you have one as well, Fifth Generation. Russell Scopes, SP3, greatly appreciate all the hard work you do on this channel. Thank you so much, Russell Scope. Thank you for you guys for the support, for watching us live. Yeah, Romeo, thank you for your contributions. You can check out Romeo in full HD quality, no lagging at all on Rated
No
Raw.
North Korea.
No, North Korea will not get involved. The Rated R Superstars number 4, starring Romeo, Drunk Guy JJ, and their special guest, Top Guy JJ. That's going to be dropping later today right here on the True Hill Heat YouTube channel. Tomorrow, we're also going to have the NWA When Our Shadows Fall roundtable review with Stat King and Ness of Fusion of Honor, so you guys can also check that out. And of course, tomorrow we go live, True Hill Heat 129 at 8:35 a.m. Eastern Time, 1:35 p.m. UK time. Myself, Miss Chrissy Love, Top Guy JJ. We're going to be previewing Impact Against All Odds, as well as NXT TakeOver in your house. And of course, you can find me over on the Sportskeeda Wrestling YouTube channel right now on my latest appearance on the Insider Cradle podcast with Kevin Kellum, where we're talking about all the news regarding SummerSlam, John Cena's return, Brock Lesnar's status, all that good stuff. And I'll be back on Sportskeeda Wrestling later on tonight following SmackDown with a new episode of Smack Talk with Dutch Mantel. And for everything True Hill Heat, myself, all my content, all the content from Powered 4 TV as well, you can follow me on Twitter at True Hill SP3 and follow the gang Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at True Hill Heat. So huge thanks to everyone who was watching us live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Huge thanks to Romeo. Huge thanks to you, John Scott, being back on
You're
the
welcome,
True.
buddy. You're welcome.
Don't make this the last time you join us, sir.
I won't. Take care, everybody.
This has been our Dark Side of the Ring, Season 3, Episode 7 review, The Dynamite Kid. For John Scott, for Romeo, and myself, it is me, your True Hill Phenom SP3. We are signing off until